For our very first episode of our show called Taking Shots, which is about vaccines, public health, access to all of the above, and all of the bad people who are trying to take them away from us, and what the consequences will be of this. So, even though, this is kind of on the fly, obviously, I am literally sitting outside at the University of California, Davis. Shout out to one of the US's best vet schools. Having lunch. Not, the ideal situation for a Substack Live, but we wanted to really get this started because this is something that Jessica Malaty Rivera, my colleague, and I think was really important. And we're going to be bringing this to you every week. So Friday, when it is happy hour time, we are going to be recapping all of the week's events in public health. Everything that you really need to know about you and your families to keep them safe, everything that's going on, because generally it's quite boring and most people aren't paying attention to this, but it really matters a lot for you and your family. So that's why we're doing this. I want to very, very briefly introduce my colleague and friend, Jessica Malaty Rivera, who is an epidemiologist, a science communicator, is absolutely brilliant at explaining how many of these diseases, many of these public health interventions go throughout society, how people talk about this with each other, how they communicate it with their families, and really answers the questions that you might have that are, the same perhaps as the questions that you might have for me, but with a different type of expertise that might be able to answer them more effectively for you. Just in case you're not interested in, the host response to emerging virus infection, which is my jam. But I want to introduce Jessica. Jessica, please tell everybody a little bit about yourself. And I'm so excited to have a standing date with you every Friday.
Likewise. Thank you, Angie. It is 1:45 where I am, so I'm hydrating for my happy hour. But I'm thrilled to be here. One of my greatest passions is making things make sense. That's why I started this Substack, to take what I've been doing on Instagram for the last 6 years, do a deeper dive for folks to pick up where we left off in shorter form consoles, make it longer form. We are dealing with a very, very interesting information ecosystem. And part of our task here is to help people even understand the information ecosystem, because it's a lot. It's a lot for even the two of us to get through. And so you can consider us your compass, your navigator, to help you understand where to go, when to read it, why to read it, and if it's trustworthy or not. That's why we want to do this on a weekly basis, because the news is constantly changing. We have a couple updates from what we've shared in the last few weeks about what's been happening at the Senate Health Committee with regard to the Surgeon General. So we're going to share about that. But as we hear more information, whether it's an emerging public health situation or more politically motivated public health policy changes, that's why we're going to be here every week on Fridays to help make it all make sense to all of you.
Thank you so much. I couldn't have said it better myself. And, we talk about this all the time, and this is our jobs, to pay attention to things like advisory policy committee meetings and regulatory changes and things like this. It's not very exciting, but I have to say, when I talk about it with people like Jessica, who's not only an expert and extremely knowledgeable, but also has a different area of expertise that's complementary to mine, and is also a fun, funny, interesting person to talk to who I actually like, it actually helps me understand the broader landscape a lot better. So that's really our goal, is to help do that for you. And so let's just jump right in. I think, we did this thing, it feels like 10 years ago, because that's how time works now, but it was last week. It was last Wednesday, in fact, where we covered the nomination hearing before the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, or the Health Committee, of Casey Means, who is the wellness grifter influencer that has been nominated for U.S. Surgeon General. And this was a really interesting experience for us, because we kind of wanted to give it a try. These nomination hearings can often be quite boring. And even though they can be sort of a circus for political reasons, they're not necessarily very informative for the American public to watch, other than to, see how our politics are going these days. Not well. So, it was kind of a ridiculous hearing, because more or less, here's the summary, Casey Means didn't really respond to any question, because most of the questions revolved around her qualifications. Those are exclusively that she has an MD from Stanford, but she dropped out of her residency immediately before completing it so that she could go on Instagram and sell supplements that, in one case, anyways, caused 36 people to have their gallbladders surgically removed because it used a toxic ingredient that was also, natural and organic. So, these are people, the Surgeon General may potentially be recommending treatments that actually are not only harmful to people, they could actually kill them if they don't have emergency surgery. And this is the person who is going to be communicating effectively the federal government's position on everything involving American health, America's doctor. So it didn't go well. And obviously, Jessica and I do not think that she is qualified to be Surgeon General. But every question she was asked that challenged her on this was, well, I went to Stanford. I went to Columbia, whatever. I'm not qualified to be Surgeon General either. I'm not a physician. I didn't train in a residency. I didn't complete one. Neither did she. So neither of us are qualified. I am qualified, and so are you, Jess, to say that she's not qualified. The Help Committee, however, seems to be confused because they are still on the fence about the fact that Casey Means kept saying, are flu shots good? Do they work? Should people get them? Do you think the hepatitis B birth dose, which has merely eliminated a lifelong deadly chronic viral infection, is a good idea? She said it's complex. She can't really answer the question. Do we want a Surgeon General who's undecided about whether it's bad for people to die of a disease that you could otherwise prevent? You tell me. But that's where we're at. Jess, what do you think about where we're at now? It's crazy to me that the Help Committee senators, the Republicans, specifically 3 of them, Bill Cassidy, who is a board certified hepatologist, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, both of whom are famous for their concern and yet subsequent lack of action on that concern, are concerned, but not willing to say what they're going to do.
Yeah.
What do we make of all of this?
It's a sad and fascinating consequence of politics over principle and politics over public health in this sense. The Senate Health Committee is split 12-1 between Republicans and Democrats, which means that it only takes one Republican to vote against their party line to make this stop. It would take only one between Murkowski, Collins, and Hassett to decide to not advance her to the next level. And somehow this decision is presenting a challenge to them. It's become difficult for them to just do the right thing. It was clear, despite the thing being a whole mess, it was clear that all 3 of them were uncomfortable with several of her answers. They pushed her. They asked her really difficult questions, and she failed to answer them with evidence-based knowledge. She instead made a bunch of canned statements from, obviously, her lawyer and her media trainer, whoever told her to be prepared for these sentences to make her not seem like an anti-vaxxer. She repeatedly would say sentences like, I believe vaccines are good and helpful and part of our public health offering, but she failed to answer questions about flu effectiveness data and if measles vaccines were necessary to recommend to everybody. And so because of that, my concern is that what we'll see is people just voting across the party line and abandoning historically purple issues. Angie and I were talking about this just last week in DC, that for the longest time, we had Republicans and Democrats all on the same page about why we should reduce harm on the youngest of our population, children, that children should not die from vaccine-preventable diseases. It was a very easy yes for both sides. But unfortunately, because of the way that the MAHA movement has infiltrated into MAGA politics, we're seeing a type of separation that has pushed Republicans, especially, to abandon that and do things to win by any means necessary, even if it means abandoning policies that they actually, in their heart of hearts, probably still agree with. So at this point, we are at a standstill. The news that we heard today from Capitol Hill is that the vote is probably a week or more out, which again is shocking. It is a very easy decision, and yet somehow Bill Cassidy, who is the chair of this committee, has not been able to call for a vote. And part of the reason is she doesn't have the votes. But what makes me wonder is he actually trying to get the votes? Does he want her to have that type of quorum so that she does advance? That's what makes me concerned. What else we heard was that it seems that Collins might be a no. It seems that Murkowski might be a no. But none of these offices were willing to answer yes or no on how they were going to vote. They were saying it was still something they were considering heavily, considering strongly, and all this other vague language. And so if you live in any of these states, even if you don't live in these states, and even if you live in states that are represented by other members of this committee, we are asking you to never stop calling, never stop writing, never stop emailing, because the pressure is working. The fact that it's actually this, hung jury for this long is telling us they are not ready to just plow through and let her advance. But it's also concerning that they're not ready to just let her not advance.
Yeah, it's wild to me that somebody like Bill Cassidy, who, and just for everybody's background again on this, this is outrageous to me, but I think to most people, given the many horrors that we are currently facing, ICE, essentially the government, state police murdering American citizens. And I should add, it's not just Alex Pretty and Renee Good. Nearly 40 people have died in ICE custody. So while we see the white people on the news who get in their faces and are killed, which is horrible, we do need to consider that there are many, many more people of color, including children, including parents, including people who are in families who are being killed by ICE, essentially for being who they are, which is the most antithetical thing imaginable to America. Mm-hmm. However, separately from all of that, Bill Cassidy is going to be responsible for just as much death, if not much, much more. Because what he did in February of last year, February 13th to be exact, he confirmed RFK. He moved his nomination to move forward to the full Senate. He was confirmed as the HHS secretary. And as a result, he has imposed policies, and I am not exaggerating when I say this, that will kill thousands, if not millions of people. And that is actually what we're facing. That is what Bill Cassidy is responsible for, because Kennedy promised him that he would not do anything to the vaccine schedule. Obviously, that was patently false. That was a lie, just like most of the things that Robert F. Kennedy and the MAHA movement say. And so now we are at a situation where we have Bill Cassidy, who is angry that he was lied to by RFK and has been trying to do political damage control ever since, is going to be primaried anyways by MAGA people who think that he has been insufficiently enthusiastic about the MAGA agenda. He is trying to be sort of, I don't appreciate Kennedy's lack of sincerity about his vaccine beliefs. We all know this guy's an anti-vaxxer. He has a body count of 83 people from a measles outbreak that he himself actively facilitated in Samoa in 2019. This man has already killed people with his vaccine policies. Cassidy approved him anyways, based on an empty promise that he made. Kennedy has embarrassed Cassidy to the point where he put an asterisk on a CDC webpage when he altered it to say false information about the MMR vaccine not causing autism. He put an asterisk on there that said, but we have to still say that it doesn't cause autism because I promised the chair of the Health Senate Committee that I would do that. It is probably the most professionally embarrassing thing I've ever seen in my life. And not only is Cassidy just okay, he's going to take that one, but he's now apparently not single-handedly doing what he could easily do to prevent Casey Means from being elevated to a similar position that she is completely grossly unqualified for, and that she will, in fact, cause massive harm, including death, to American children as a result.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that the stakes are very, very high this month. There is a lot that is about to happen between potentially a vote that can happen. Hang on, I got to close this door.
No worries. Hey, everybody. So I will be doing these things from a bar outside, and Jessica will be doing these things with children constantly interrupting because our lives are actually normal adult people's lives, and we have shit going on. That's right. Pardon us for our lack of professionalism.
That's right. So this month, as I was saying, has some pretty high stakes. We have, this potential vote that can happen in a week or two. And in 12 days, we have the rescheduled ACIP meeting. That's the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. And it is scheduled to happen from March 18th and 19th. And all of these things are connected. The fact that we have a group of people who are all very ideologically aligned and have all been what they call spurned by, the scientific establishment throughout COVID-19, we are watching what feels like a revenge tour. Even the sheer nomination of Casey Means is almost like a slap in the face to public health, credentialed, tenured professionals who have been in these positions in years past. Thinking about previous Surgeon Generals, she doesn't even compare to them. Thinking about previous ACIP members, it's laughable to even look at who's on that committee now. Or even the CDC director. We now have Jay Bhattacharya, who's the interim director, while he's also the director of the NIH. And all these people are working hand in hand to advance an extremely anti-science agenda, which is why we're going to be covering the next ACIP meeting very closely, similar to how we did it for the Surgeon General confirmation hearing. We'll try to do it kind of like a sports coverage in real time to kind of help debunk in real time or help clarify in real time. But what Angie said in the beginning is also not lost on me, that for years this was very insider information. The ACIP meeting was not a popular event to stream on your television or on your computer. We were all tuning in because it was very consequential to our industries. I failed to mention that my training is actually in emerging infectious diseases and epidemiology. I spent many years studying viruses in the lab myself. So the policies and decisions that come out of a vaccine advisory board were very, very important to me. But now it's really important to everybody because they're making decisions that have very sweeping implications. I remember last year I posted a video even before ACIP had completely changed, warning people that what happens at ACIP affects everybody. It's not even just kids. It's going to affect pregnant people. It's going to affect elderly people. It's going to affect every single person in your community and around you. And so because of that, Angie and I want to bring all that home. And if you're going to be so oversaturated with all this public health content anyway, at least we can help you understand what it all means.
Exactly. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. And, I have to say, I'm a virologist and I've been working in academia in virology for the last 25, 30 years almost. I mean, I guess if you count my undergraduate, Casey Means does. So maybe I should count that too. I've been working for more than 30 years on this stuff. Technically, my first lab job was in high school. So I've been doing it since I was 17, 16. But in reality, I've been doing it for 25 years as an adult, as somebody who is a practicing virologist and still is. And the fact is, I didn't know how consequential many of these things were until I became the co-editor-in-chief journal Vaccine, and I started working in the vaccine space. And then I sort of got it. But it wasn't until things really started to fall apart that I understood how really, truly important all of this stuff is. And one of the things that really, really strikes me, and I have some breaking news that I'm about to say in just one hot second, and you are going to die, Jessica, and everybody watching is going to freak out too, although it's the second time this has happened. But I think that it's really important for people to understand that these boring things that happen behind the scenes are now occurring because the people who are in these positions are complete clowns. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, but it's not funny because at the end of the day, you can watch somebody like Robert Malone, who is the vice chair of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, talk about psychological warfare and all of his MK Ultra bullshit. And then you realize that this man is actually in charge of whether or not your children or you can access vaccines that will actually keep you alive.
That's right.
However, there is a good piece of news that I just literally got a text about. The director of the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research at the Food and Drug Administration is a guy named Vinay Prasad. He is absolutely unqualified for his role. He already quit once, and then unfortunately they brought him back. So perhaps that will happen this time too. But he has just left the FDA. So that's actually a great thing, because even though the ACIP, the VRBPAC, which is a different FDA expert advisory committee that Jessica and I are also going to cover on March 13th, talking about access to the next year's flu shot. Those are all very important. But the guy who makes all the decisions at FDA about whether or not you can access a vaccine or not is this guy named Vinay Prasad. He's a hematologist, oncologist, podcaster who has a real hard on for placebo-controlled clinical trials and thinks that anything that doesn't have one is pointless, because he doesn't actually know anything about vaccines or infectious diseases or anything like that. He's been there for a long time. He's been arbitrarily canceling vaccines, and now he's out again. So hopefully it lasts longer than 2 weeks, which is how long his departure lasted last time. But he's been arbitrarily canceling all kinds of vaccines as well as rare drug treatments, including for Huntington's disease, which is a lethal genetic disease that people get. It's in families. It's incurable. It is heartbreaking for people who get it. And there is a drug that works 75% of the time, can seriously prolong people's lives, can seriously save their lives, can seriously ameliorate their disease. And he shit canned it because he thinks that the trial wasn't designed well enough. These are people's lives. And if you are the nation's top vaccine and rare disease drug regulator, you do not get to make decisions based on a hot take on your podcast from 2019. You have to make decisions based on what's going to help the most people who are paying for your salary, who are paying for the Food and Drug Administration, and who are expecting it to regulate drugs based on evidence, not on the hot opinions of their Steve Urkel-esque podcaster vaccine regulators. So he's out. See you later, Vinay.
This is major.
Huge.
It's huge because, and I just shared, last week, you probably saw the whiplash flip-flop headlines of the FDA denying Moderna's mRNA flu vaccine trial review. And then a couple of days later, they said, actually, we will do it. That was Vinay. Vinay is the person who balked at the study design, saying that the way that it was designed, which was going to be comparing the trial results to a previously FDA-approved flu vaccine, was not compatible with the best available standard of care. We cannot overemphasize the fact that Vinay does not understand true clinical trial architecture. He has completely become myopic in his view of every single thing needs to be a double-blinded, randomized controlled placebo trial, which is not how we do science in every application, because it's literally A, impossible, and B, unethical. And so thank goodness the FDA reversed that decision. The mRNA flu vaccine trial will continue, and we hope that hopefully by flu season next year, we'll have a highly effective mRNA flu vaccine, especially for people who are 65 and older. But again, there was no reason for all of the nonsense that has happened at FDA except for ideology and politics, not science. We've said this multiple times. The politics have changed, the science has not. And the political appointees here have been icing out career scientists who have been in these agencies doing valiant work ever since. They've been told to not be worked with. They've been left out of meetings and calls. They've been told if they do anything that is not consistent with the executive orders or the executive directors of this administration, that they'll be pushed out or riffed. And so it's reassuring to me that sometimes decisions like this happen. Between Kristi Noem yesterday and Vinay Prasad, I'm thrilled.
They are removing people. And I think we're about to finish up because today was a very short episode of Taking Shots. Next week, we're going to be here longer and have a much more fulsome discussion. But I have to say that there is so much to talk about in this regard, because the most important thing that I keep taking home from this is that when we make a big enough deal about this, shit gets done. People have been freaking out about Kristi Noem, and thanks to Tom Tillis, which is a phrase that I very rarely utter, she was exposed as somebody who is completely unfit. And we all knew that. She's presiding over literally the murder of Americans. She is rounding up people. She's the head of the Gestapo, essentially. We all knew that she had to go. But It was only after enough people realized that she had to go that she fucking went. And the same thing with Vinay Prasad. Hopefully it'll stick this time. If we keep making a big enough deal about this, if enough people understand what the consequences are of all of this stuff, people are actually able to make a difference. And we are actually able to remove some of these people from these positions, which will directly result in people's lives being saved. So I think that, kind of as we start to close this out, like, we need to understand that actually the more people are shouting about this, the more people are saying this is unacceptable and this is not part of our American values. We are not going to vote for this in November, but we're also not going to stand for it. Yeah. So you can try to take our elections away. You can try to take our freedom away. We're still going to push back against it because you know what? It works. And that's how you remove these people from these positions. And that's how we take our country back. That's how we take our health back.
Yeah,
and
that's right. I mean, at the end of the day, MAHA and MAGA are fundamentally incompatible mechanisms and movements. And it's becoming clear. So while we are watching so many things in our democratic systems unravel, we're also seeing a bit of a breakup happen between MAHA and MAGA because, again, one requires heavy regulation and one is a sledgehammer deregulation. And we are finally now starting to see how one was not actually going to help the other. And so stay with us as we explain how all of that, because MAHA is kind of here for a reckoning and realizing that this administration does not actually care about making America healthy again.
You know what I just keep thinking of, Jess? Like we've talked about this so many times, is like watch what happens live and sort of reality television commentary, because in many ways it feels like that. But that's sort of what it is. And if you look at, say, what have the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills ever actually accomplished? Nothing.
Not a thing.
Nothing.
Except for my entertainment.
Except for our entertainment. And that's all that these people are going to accomplish too, except instead of your entertainment, they want your money. And they also want you to follow them because it doesn't really matter whether they believe it or not. They just want you to follow them so that they'll have power. And what people really need to understand is that you do not want to be following people so that they can have power. What we are trying to do is give you the information that will allow you to decide where your power should be devoted.
That's right.
So I'm so happy to be doing this with you, Jessica. I just want to flag a few things for people, what they have coming up. More organized taking shots happy hours for longer periods of time with more detailed discussions and also visual aids. We are going to be doing this on a different platform going forward so that we can also stream it on other platforms besides Substack for those of you who are not here. Second thing is we are going to be putting out a newsletter so that you guys at the beginning of the week might know the things that you should have on your radar. We're calling it the MMMWR after the CDC's classic publication, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. In our case, it's the MAHA MMWR. We're going to tell you about how many people are getting sick or dead because of MAHA's actions. And then every Friday, we're going to follow it up. And then on March 13th, we're going to be covering the Verb Pack meeting, which is going to be, again, addressing availability of flu shots at FDA. And then on March 18th and 19th, going to be an ACIP extravaganza. And boy, from the rumors I've heard, this ACIP meeting is going to be ridiculous. So you're not going to want to miss any of this. You're going to be hearing from us a lot more. I just turned in 2 grants. So now I'm going to be available to do all sorts of Substacking more frequently. Jess will, of course, be available on her media platforms, and we are here for you. So let us know what you want to hear about. We'll see you next Friday. It was great to see you, Jess.
Good to see you, Angie. Talk to y'all soon.
Take care. Bye.